Yes.
Trevor, thanks for all of those wonderful readings. Can I ask you about the self-imposed constriction? Could you say a little bit more about that as a self-reflexive gesture in tension with what you described as trying to internalise certain externally imposed constrictions?
Yeah, I can, but it's obviously like what I'm doing, what I set out to do, and in relation to this also sort of continue doing is it's purely a personal thing. I can't generalise. I'm not Oulipo. Oulipo, for those of you who don't know, is the sort of a literary movement founded in France after the Second World War by Raymond Queneau. It's, excuse my lack of a French accent, Ouvroir pour littérature potentielle, the workshop for potential literature. And the idea was to write a set of rules and then write something under those rules. And the rules must be non-trivial. They must be difficult to work with. You must do a good job. And also, for the Oulipo people, the thematics of the text should, in a way, echo the constraint. And the best example of this, I know it seems like I'm going sideways, I will come back, but the best sort of known, the most successful example I know of it, I think, is Georges Perec, with Disparu, I think it is, a void, it's translated as, which is a lipogram. It lacks the letter E, the story is about a society which is functioning as though and certainly people are being abstracted from the society. Maybe it's an echo of the Holocaust or whatever. And the society is continuing to stagger on as though there were nothing wrong. And it echoes the way in which the narrative, even though we can choose the word "the" or so many other, E being the most common letter in the English language, and I gather it's even more proportionally common in French. So you take out this major element and then pretend that you're functioning fine, nothing's missing. So that's a fine example of it. Now, for my purposes, I don't insist on the constraint being perfect. In the case of these sonnets from Spencer, I even put in an imperfection purposely. Although there was one where I could have done it perfectly. Some of my other ones, like the 36-word thing, the whole system blew up on me, and I wasn't able to complete it. But as far as I'm concerned, all I want is, as it were, something to lean against. I want a pressure which isn't under my control, which is forcing me to do certain things, forcing me not to do certain other things. And that then, somehow within my psychology, the way it works, is that it frees me up because my problem with authority comes to the fore. And if something is trying to stop me doing something, I immediately will try to find every way that I can to do it.
I suppose the thrust of my question was, how far do you consider it not just a constriction that allows you to improvise, but one that has, I suppose, a kind of, I don't know, even a political sort of purchase. I mean, I wonder how, because you did talk about that external imposition of the world, and I just wondered how strong you would be in that kind of...
It would be my sense is that it's working for me in that way, and I try to make it work in that way. If you asked me to pin it down, I couldn't. But it performs that function for me psychologically.
Is it like that you couldn't, or that you wouldn't want to?
I can't at the moment, and I would distrust if I think I probably, if you kept all gazing at me hard for the next 10 minutes, I probably would come up with an explanation, but I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah, and you probably, I'm just sort of suspecting that then you would lose something in the actual work. I immediately abandon that and I'd go on to something else where I didn't fully understand it. Yeah. The whole point is, I remember David Lloyd, I think it is, in a review once of my stuff, he said that I use an odd combination of expressionism and constructivism. And I presume this means sort of, very intellectual control, clear technical control, and on the other hand, sort of, I'm sort of using stuff like sort of almost deep image stuff, like Lorca is one of the poets I greatly like. So how do you keep these two going at once? Sort of like almost like brutalist architecture, and at the same time, having to live in the things that you're designing and making in this totally oppressive way. And for me, well, I mean, I like to sort of squat in these buildings.
I very much liked listening to your theory, but it was very hard for me to follow the poetry, the actual practice of it.
Yeah.
I'd say partly it's because it's more poetry that you'd have to read as well as to see the experiment in it.
Yeah.
But I wish you would have slowed down sometimes. You see, I'm not a mother tongue English, and when I
what is your mother tongue?
German, and when I try and understand everything, it just takes that little bit longer, I think. So I find it really hard to follow it, and when it's fast, I find it even harder. So I wasn't able to follow a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, my justification for that, and it's horses for courses. I mean, for some people it works, for some people for other times it doesn't. And also I read at different speeds at different times. It depends on my mood at the time. But my basic way, what's important to me is to use language not communicatively, but to develop, as it were, other musics within the other resonance and layers of the language. Then, okay, you'll miss. I'm not trying to communicate a meaning, I'm not trying to communicate a meaning, a sort of a determinate sense.
I even missed that sound, that melodic aspect. I couldn't catch it.
Yeah, well, okay, in that case, I'm at fault.
So I was very interested in hearing what's to come after your introductions and after your explanations, which were very enhancing. But it was a bit of a pity that I couldn't
but Trevor, there is those two things that are going on, or a number of things going on. That the speed at which you read it is part of the way you write it and construct it, and also the way it's written on the page, the way it's constructed on the page is another thing as well. So you're talking about all these complex ways of putting these things together, and there's also complex ways of hearing it, reading it, visually seeing it and stuff like that, and they're also part of it. That's why
but if I mean, that is true, and for me I want to work across the spectrum of these, as I say, depending on the mood takes me, how I feel at a particular time.
I'm not saying no speed in poetry, that's not right.
But if I was, if you actually didn't catch a lot of it because I went too fast a good deal of the time, then it's possible that I am going too fast. I mean, people often say it to me, a lot of the time I disregard it, but tonight I'm not sure, and I was actually trying to explain tonight, so if I was going too fast,
the explanations were very, very interesting and really inspiring. That will take some points home for me.
Good.
And I'll probably look at the book.
It would be nice, the visual would be nice as well. I mean, English is my mother tongue, and no, I didn't catch on of it, but I did get a sense of maybe more than you picked up, a sense of what, of all the stuff that was in there,
And incidentally, a number of these books are for sale over here. You can take your own visual copy.
The big ones are a tenner, and the thin one in the middle, the translations, is 7, or let's say 6. Here, whoever gets that one can my markers.
They're already gaining value on Amazon, so.